Talking financial organization and a professional practice does not have to be boring. Are you ready for a few money in, money out ideas? It's Susan Gunn coming directly to your head to make you think. Can you handle the truth? Because she is known for being energetic, laughs a lot, and gives honest, sometimes direct, but always practical advice. It's time now for Money In, Money Out.
It is great to be back with you for a new season of Money In, Money Out. The beginning of December brought an abrupt end to the 2021 season, as I was sick through most of January. But during that time, I did create a calendar of exciting information to bring to this table, so stay tuned. But what was planned can always be postponed. Haven't we learned that the past 2 years? Out of a sense of urgency, the next two podcasts need to be created. Cybersecurity has always been a threat to every business and every home. But with the increased Russian attacks against the Ukraine, it becomes more of a reality here in the US and abroad. My heart is so broken over what is happening in the Ukraine. I have many friends that have spent time in the Ukraine and have always talked about how wonderful the people were there. They're not unlike us. They have post offices, markets, gas stations, dental practices, schools, etc. They were doing well, growing, and thriving. Someone actually said to me this last weekend that the invasion really wasn't happening, and that Russia really wasn't killing people or bombing, and that it was just the media blowing something out of proportion. After I stared at them for a good minute in disbelief, I shook my head, mumbled a few things about a very dangerously limiting, narrow-minded worldview, and walked away while still shaking my head, trying really not to say anything more curt. Let me be clear. Just because we could never imagine that happening in our part of the world does not mean it's happening in theirs. There have been many things that have happened these past few years that we could not imagine, but that does not negate the existence. The Ukrainians have Gmail accounts, take their kids to school, fight cancer, give birth, try to figure out what to cook for dinner, have cats and dogs, get their hair cut, enjoy sports, watch movies at theaters. Again, they were going about living just like us. I'm appalled at a leader who decides to invade, and that the reason is, quote, Ukrainian used to be part of Russia, therefore we're just taking back what is ours, end quote. What exactly are they taking back? Russia is bombing, using tanks and missiles, paratroopers and ground soldiers, and destroying buildings, homes, and the Ukrainians themselves. What will be left that's actually usable? This is not about taking back something that belonged to Russia. This is about Putin, 100%. Because he wants it, and he will get it or destroy it all. He's acting like a kid. Oh, I know you didn't ask for my political opinion, but you're getting it. Sorry. Just this morning, I heard that the Russian lawmakers are wanting to create a law that forces anyone protesting the Ukrainian invasion into military service. Putin reminds me of another narcissist that invaded countries in Europe, killing anyone who defied him and those he considered were inferior to his race. During that war, Americans not on the war front stepped up to build bombs and the airplanes to carry them. I saw similar pictures of Ukrainians reusing household products, what they had on hand, to build Molotov cocktails. Is it not interesting? Listen to this. Is it not interesting that the name Molotov refers to a Soviet foreign minister who was the creator of a pact signed in 1939? And even more interesting is the similarity in the lies that Molotov and Putin spread. Molotov stated that the bombing missions in Finland were humanitarian food deliveries for starving neighbors. And now Molotov cocktails are being thrown against their Russian invaders. Talk about fair play. The U.S. waited then too. By this time, the narcissist has threatened nuclear action. I'm just mind blown. Have we not learned anything from history? The warfare has not just been what is seen, but also is what is unseen. This takes war to an all new level. During World War I and the Korean War, their radio broadcasts were to give misinformation and discourage the opposing soldiers. Tokyo Rose, you guys remember her name? Well, it was actually a group of broadcasters, all women, who spread propaganda during World War II for Japan. Russia controls their media outlets and is spreading their own propaganda. As one journalist writes, Putin uses floods of disinformation to confuse and misdirect people overseas and bolster support at home. But the spread of that misinformation has been slowly shut down as countries have imposed their sanctions. Russia has interfered with satellite communications and created cyber attacks against the Ukraine to dismantle their financial markets and corporations internally. As a result, nobody is safe. Countries and corporations are reviewing their cyber structures to ensure they are protected. That brings the Ukrainian war to America. We are just one digital disruption away from being affected. If you have listened to any of my podcasts, you know that one of my frequent co-hosts is Janice Jansen. Janice is a fellow certified fraud examiner and co-owner of GTS Gurus, a dental practice management firm. Janice and I were going to record another In the Embezzlement News episode, but we both felt that cybersecurity takes all precedence at this time. So we invited our friend, cybersecurity expert, Debi Carr, to join us today. Debi is the CEO of DK Carr and Associates, a technology and security consulting firm. She has over 30 years of experience in technology and security, primarily in the healthcare field, where she helps practices maintain HIPAA high-tech compliance. However, she is all across the board right now. Welcome to you both.
Hi, Susan. Thank you for having me.
Hey, Susan, it's great to be back.
Yep. All right. We have a ton of information. We already pre-talked a little bit, and I said, "Oh, this is going to be one of those episodes we could probably talk for 4 hours." So, just to let you know, we are going to split it. Because of that, we've decided to break up the conversation between work and home so that we can cover all of those bases in good detail. So, the first one we're going to talk about is home. That'll be this episode. So, Debi, I know, sorry, I said that backwards, didn't I? This episode's going to be about work.
Okay.
I saw we have cameras so we can see each other, and I saw their confused looks on their faces were pretty priceless. I wish I had my camera up. But anyways, this time we're going to, let me try that again. This time we're going to talk about work. So, and how to protect our workplace against a cybersecurity attack. So, Debi.
Well, the good news is that I'm pretty flexible about security, so I could go home, work, anywhere you are, because it's all about layers of security and security in depth.
Awesome. Well, what I want you to start talking about, just to kind of kick us off, what do you consider to be the need of any company to implement to protect themselves against a cybersecurity attack?
Well, can we first start talking about what the landscape is and what the realities are of what's happening right now? Because we
You go ahead.
do have a lot of different gangs and organizations coming at it in various ways. And yes, right now the main fight, so to speak, is between the Ukrainians and the Russians. However, a lot of the gangs have taken up sides. And so, like the group Anonymous, that we know is an ongoing cyber threat gang, they have taken the side of Ukraine and they are attacking Russia. But then you have the Conti group. They were instrumental in the attack against our pipeline and our electric grid that have taken up the side of Russia. So in cyber, it's not contained to this geographical area. Several years ago, we had a situation where, again, Russia was attacking Ukraine. And one of the businesses that did business with Ukraine was Merrick, which is a drug company here in the United States. They were infected. And the type of virus that they were infected with was called WannaCry. And so it affected, and then of course, Merrick does business with other businesses here in the United States. So other businesses were affected here in the United States. So for us to have in our heads that, oh, it's happening over there and it could never affect us over here is a fallacy. It's a myth because it is very real. And whether it's a direct intent hit, because, there's some people that aren't so happy with us right now, or whether it's a what we call a sidebar or an indirect hit. We are all still very vulnerable to this whole situation, and it is real. And we have a lot of people that are getting involved because it is a heart-wrenching situation. And so we have a lot of people that are, oh, well, I've got a little hacking talent, let me do this, and they may not necessarily know what they're hitting. So the threat is real. I know we've been getting all kinds of notices, and because I'm also a member of the FBI Info Guard and CISA, and so I get all these alerts. So it can very easily happen over here as well as over there, and we could be intentional or unintentional.
Did you hear about the anonymous group of
Yes,
hackers?
yes,
So they are like, I'm like, go for it, guys,
yeah.
just go for it.
And they are an
Well, tell,
political type group,
yeah,
and that's what they do. They are not really a government, where Conti is more government backed. Anonymous is their own entity, and so they have the problem. There is they have no guide. They do what they want to do. There's no
yeah.
filter for them. If they see something and they want to do it, they don't have to go ask permission. Where Conti kind of has to ask permission, if you know what I mean. So, although right now they probably don't have to ask too much permission, but you know what I'm saying. That and they're not. They're just two of the known groups. I mean, there's a lot of other ones that are out there, but are not. Those two are the top ones that everybody kind of knows about because Anonymous has been very vocal with their positions on geopolitical factors and that kind of thing. And then, of course, Conti, we know because they hacked our pipeline and they hacked our electrical grid just so that they could say, look, see what we can do.
Yeah, but anonymous is like recruiting.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
It,
yeah. Did you hear about
it,
that? So, I live in Florida, right? And
right.
did you hear about the kid at UCF?
No.
Hmm. So, there was a kid at UCF that tracked Elon Musk's flights, his plane, his private jet. And so he contacted Elon and showed him how he was tracking him. And Elon said, hey, I'll pay you $5,000 to stop. And the kid said, well, that's not quite enough. I want 50K and perhaps a job. Well, now he is tracking Russian oligarchs. That same kid. This is a
Oh, that's the same
freshman.
guy.
Yeah, this is a
I heard
freshman
somebody was doing it, but
at
I
this
didn't know who was doing it.
at this
Wow.
college here in Orlando, Florida.
Yeah. So to those guys,
As long as they're on the
as
right
long as you
side.
stay away from our stuff. Yeah.
But the thing is, Susan, is they're not going to stay away from our stuff
No, I
because
know.
there's going to be that, even if it's an incidental attack, it's going to happen because we work off of IP addresses, and you don't always know that that IP address is in the United States or that IP address is, in Russia, in Ukraine, and we're doing business. This is a global economy. So, doctors are doing business with bigger companies that are doing business overseas. And so if you're doing business with China or you're doing business with somebody overseas, the European Union or whatever, and that email happens to have a Trojan in it, and it's passed through. I mean, look at the Target breach several years ago. The Target breach was a local HVAC company for a group of regional Target stores that sent an invoice to be paid to Target, and it took out their PCI
And they
program.
clicked on it. Do you know what format the invoice was in? Was it a PDF or
I
what did
believe
they
it.
do?
I believe it was a PDF. But one of the things, and I was going to talk about this later, but one of the things, this is about creating fear. So we'll skip to that right now. We're seeing a lot of emails coming out, just phishing emails, whaling emails, just trying to get you to click. We're also seeing emails that, are ripping at our hearts. Support the Ukrainian people. Donate here. And, these are things that they want to create an action. They want to create either a fear, or they know we're a compassionate nation. And so it's the bottom line is all about the money. And so they want to create that fear, and they want to create, or they want to create that feel sorry for me and donate. Why do you think GoFundMe is so successful? Because we're a compassionate nation.
Well, and those emails, all the phishing emails are compelled to action.
Right.
They're created with an emotional basis
Mhm.
so that they compel you to an action, whether that is clicking on a link that will download an executable file
Right.
or a Trojan or a worm or anything like that. That's why I tell my friends all the time, don't send me anything that I have to click to a page that I don't know what it is.
Right. And
And
yeah,
so,
don't follow any links in an email.
yeah,
Don't enable, if you do get an invoice, don't enable the macros when you get that invoice.
right.
If you can't see it, if you can't print it, screenshot it. But don't enable the macros on it, because that's where that embedded code is. Be careful where you're surfing. We saw in the start of COVID, between March 25th and February 25th and March 25th, we saw over 500,000 websites created. And the FBI estimates that over 450,000 of those held malicious code in them.
Wow.
The ads in Google, they're not necessarily the company you want. They're a company that has cloned that site, and is you put in your credentials, and then they'll forward you to that site because they want you to think you're there. So don't click on the ads that are there. We have to be mindful of that. We're constantly needing to think about the culture of security and layers of security.
You saying that about the Google ads makes me think about, people can understand. I get another person that I'm already friends with on Facebook that somebody cloned that person, that
Yeah,
profile. So same thing is happening with the Google ads, it sounds like, and
it
they're
is.
cloning another company. Wow.
We're all in business. So we all have, heaven knows who on our Facebook pages. But, be selective who you follow, or who you're granting access to. Yes, a lot of our information is public, but be careful about public. But yes, I know we can stay on this all day. The fact is, the threat is real, and we do need to have a culture of security, and where we get that is what we call security in depth, or layers of a security.
So, what do you recommend, though, that the companies get? I mean, I know what Janice and I recommend from a certified fraud examiner side on what we say about emails, but I tell everybody, do not download pictures on your work
Yeah.
computer. Don't click on any links about emails. No personal emails. Do
Oh,
that
no,
on your
no
own
personal.
phone.
Yeah, exactly. That's what you have a phone for. And every practice should, if you're going to allow Wi-Fi in your practice, you have a guest Wi-Fi. So every practice should have a firewall. Every business in the United States should have a firewall. And my feeling on that. Every entity, whether it be a
No,
business or a
hey, hey,
house.
okay, stop that right now. What is a firewall? Can you
Oh,
get that to be
yes.
really simple? Because I'll tell you, some practices aren't even clear about what a firewall really is and what it obtains.
So what a firewall is it can be either a hardware or a software. And again, it's about layers. So we have this wonderful little box that our little our IP, our internet provider, provides for us, and it brings the World Wide Web into our homes and into our businesses. And they give us this long password to go with that box, and we have the capability of enabling a software based firewall in there. What a firewall does is it says, okay, I want this traffic to be able to come into my house or my business. No, I don't want this traffic. So it allows you to be selective as to what traffic, what internet traffic is going to come in or out of our businesses. And the first thing I say when configuring is if it's not red, white, and blue and stars and stripes, to block it. But then you might have to play with it a little bit because Google has places all over the world. But start there, restrict it down as much as you can. But then every business should have what we call a perimeter defense. It is a box that you purchase that, again, you control the amount of traffic that comes in, the amount of traffic that goes out. And when you have a commercial grade firewall, you're able to segment that off, and you can say, okay, we want our VoIP phones to be on this VLAN or virtual local area network. We want the practice to be able to answer the phones, but we don't want what we call frequency hopping. We don't want from the VoIP phone to be able to hop over into our network. So we need to segment, and that luxury comes with having a commercial grade firewall that allows you to segment off the devices and the networks that you need within your practice so that you can control what information's coming in, but most importantly, what information is going out and where it's going.
Okay. So I'm looking at firewalls and I can see some that are like $200 and I see them going all the way up to $1,700. So what do they really need
They need
in a firewall for
they
their
need
work?
a firewall that has an active, what we call IDS, which is I just totally went blank because it's IDS or IPS, which it's a signature based intrusion detection or intrusion prevention system. So it's constantly updating and saying, okay, this is good traffic. This is, oh wait, this is bad traffic. This is good traffic. This is good traffic. Think of a traffic cop standing at a corner, and he says, okay, come on, cars. Oh no, you guys, wait, you're not good. I want to make sure that you have permission to come in, and we do that again through permissions. And again, it's through the firewall, and then we have another layer.
Okay. So that layer, that first layer, is it on, this is so basic, but I know people are going to have this question. Is it on the side where the internet comes in, or is it on the side after it's gone through the IP protocol box that is given to us by our provider, or is it on the side of where it goes to the rest of the workplace?
No, it's our perimeter defense. So our perimeter
Okay.
defense, we have to have, think of a building where you have your front door and you come into your foyer. And right there is where we're going to have that firewall, because we don't want just anybody walking through the rest of our building. So we have that think of it as you walk into a building and you have a security guard sit right there at the front door, and you have to go up to the security guard and say, hey, I want to go to suite 10 or I want to go to suite 400, and he has to give you permission to go to those places. That's what a firewall would do. It would be that box. You have to have the internet coming in, but once you get in, we want to direct where you go, and we want to
Okay.
give permission for where you get to go.
Awesome. Good answer. Good answer. So that's the first layer.
That's the first layer.
All right. What's the next layer?
The next layer would be access control. So often in these practices and in business, We think that everybody's got to have admin privileges. Everybody's got to be able to do everything. They don't. And it's really, I know employees think, well, my doctor just doesn't trust me. No, you know what? It's really for the employees' protection. Because if you have those blocks in place, then you can't be blamed for doing something that you weren't supposed to do.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Janice.
And that's something that Susan and I say all the time too, with the embezzlement, and that it's not just protecting the doctor, it is protecting the employee also. And if you don't have rights to do it, then it wasn't me. But if you have rights to do anything, then it could be pointed at you, and maybe it wasn't, but it could have been. So yeah, we say that all the time. Don't
Yeah.
give them access to everything.
It's a good CYA.
Yeah, it is. But we're going to use Active Directory to grant permission. And we want to keep the minimally necessary rule in place. We want you to be able to do your job. We want you to have every tool that you need to do your job effectively. But we want it to be just the minimally necessary information. You don't need more. In the military, it's hurry up and wait, and you'll know when we need you to know kind of thing. It's the same thing. And nobody in the practice should be utilizing administrative controls. Everybody, including the doctor, should use user credentials, because in Active Directory, we can, right off the bat, we can say, okay, no user is allowed to download anything. In most cases, what is a hacker doing? They're downloading malicious code. Well, if nobody has the authority in the practice to be able to download anything, they're not going to be able to do that.
Okay,
It's
so let me ask a really fundamental question though.
sure.
What is an Active Directory?
So when you're using Windows Server, it is the control panel inside the server software that the IT partner, and I say partner because every practice should have an IT partner to really take care of these things and to monitor and be doing the things that they need to do. But the Active Directory is a control panel within inside the server that allows them to say, okay, we have these users and these users have these options. What I tell doctors is I don't want them to have to be changing every time we have a new employee, because right now it seems like they're coming and going. But group them. So we have hygienists, we have assistants. Now, do the hygienists and assistants really need access to the internet? Really? Do they? So let's think about it. Some offices, they do, and in some offices, they do not. So you can say to your IT, if it is a hygienist, block their ability to go out to the internet. If it is an assistant, give them limited access, because I want them to be able to look up a drug when I tell them to go to drugs.com. So they can put in the Active Directory, okay, the assistant can go to drug.com. Oh, we have a lead assistant that does our ordering and we all order from XYZ. That assistant can go out to drugs.com and XYZ company. We can control the access that they have to the practice. Of course, administrative, they need to verify insurance and check insurance. So we're going to be a little more gratuitous on their permissions. But
Front desk.
right,
Yeah,
we're
calling.
going to block everybody, including the doctor. They're not going to be, the doctor should have two accounts. He should have his admin credentials, because if he fires the IT company, I want him to be able to get into the computers. But I want him to take those credentials and I want him to lock them in a drawer somewhere, and I don't want him to use it. I want, when he fires the IT company, that he has to go search for it, because I want him to use his user account every day. Because once a hacker gets in, it used to be that they would get in, they were there 15, maybe 20 minutes. They just kind of look around, see where they are, deploy their thing, everything's frozen. Send me your Bitcoin, please. Not anymore. What we're seeing now is that they're downloading what we call a keylogger into the system.
Mm.
So they're watching all the keystrokes, because what they're looking for is that escalation of privilege. They want to get into those higher admin accounts, because that's where they're able to do damage. If they're in the user accounts and the users can't do anything, they can't do anything. They're going to move on. They're going to get aggravated. They're not going to spend a lot of time spinning their wheels here. They are out to make money. And so if they're not able to get in quickly, they're going to move on.
So they, those emails we've got that says, they always went to spam. We have hacked into your computer and we know you have visited porn
Oh,
sites.
yes.
And so you
Shame
have
on
to
you,
pay
Susan.
X number of dollars. Oh my gosh, I used to get it all the time and they've kind of stopped. But it's
Oh, I
but
bet you if you
but
check your spam now, they're backed up.
the the user accounts on that, is there a way to select no porn sites and to
Yes.
just blanket
Yes.
across the board? Okay.
Yes, you can use Active Directory to. Now, some doctors might get upset with you on that, but
Yeah, well,
that's
too bad.
But exactly, too bad. That's what your personal computer is for, not in this
Well,
environment.
and I will tell you, that's when they go to those sites, those are great places to pick up viruses. I mean,
So yes,
more than the more. So that was kind of a tongue in cheek.
right. We were talking.
Janice is shaking her head at me. But anyways,
we were talking about that certification. That one of the types of encryption is called stegonometry, and it's basically where you take malicious code and you put it into a picture. Because what is malicious code? It is. I mean, what is a picture? There's coding behind it. And so, but you just drop in a little bit of malicious code and off you go. So we want the doctors to be locked down. We don't want them to have the admin permissions, because then if they do go to use their admin, I was just at Midwinter and they had some phenomenal technology, and you were there too. They had some phenomenal technology. But you know what happens when you bring that technology into your practice? You've disrupted the security environment. So the hope is that when you're using a side effect of using that user account is when you go to download or install something, you're told you can't. And then you can go through what we call the change management process, where you can effectively ask, okay, what are the requirements? How is this going to affect things? I have a know of a doctor that bought a cone beam. We all know that those are not exactly, $5.50, and had it delivered and called his IT company to start the installation process. And the IT's like, nothing we can do. Your infrastructure is not set up to accept this. We've been telling you for 2 years, you need to upgrade your computers, and it's not going to run. It's the requirements. So, and that could have been avoided if he had gone through the change management process. So utilizing that, thinking of that culture of security, and instituting that culture of security where we stop, we think about what we're doing before we do it, kind of thing.
I got to tell you, I would imagine that most businesses, including dentistry, look at all of this stuff and go, okay, can we just go back to pen and paper?
But we're too far
Because it's
gone. We're
we are,
we're too
and
far
we
gone.
can't.
And
I
we're
would
too
love to do.
dependent.
I use pencils. I went back to using pencils. So that's my archaic way of handling things. But there are lots of things to be said about the user accounts, because I know lots of practices in businesses. It's not just practices, because all of this applies to every business,
Every
every
business.
industry. Yeah, it's not just industry, but read through what we've been talking about. Dental practices. My YMCA has a guest account. And it's like, okay, well, did you guys put any parameters on that? I actually asked that question. They didn't know.
They probably didn't, but if you ask your
Mm.
IT, but think about hotels.
Oh,
Hotels have
yeah.
people coming in and out. I know the CISOs for 2 major hotel chains. I know what they're doing in their hotels. And so, they're dealing with all different kinds of things. They have a Wi-Fi that each person, it's a guest in their facility, can use. And then they have the Wi-Fi that if you're there for a convention, you can use, because they're segmenting everything. But if you think they're letting you in on their stuff, well, not happening. So
No.
they have that guest Wi-Fi. So you're absolutely correct. It's not, these are best practices across the board. It doesn't matter what industry.
So that brings up a question. What do you do when you go to a hotel? How do you secure your laptop?
If I'm doing anything financial, I use the hotspot on my phone. If I need to get on there really quickly, I have a VPN that I attach to. It's called Safe Search or Surf
Mhm.
Safe or something like that, where as soon as I get on, I activate it and it blocks my IP.
I use Bitdefender VPN
Yeah,
as
I've
well.
I've used that as
What do you
well.
use? What do you use, Janice?
I use AVG VPN.
Yep. See, we all use some form of VPN. So I just wanted to bring that up because I know that there are lots of people that use the hotel Wi-Fi's or restaurants or Starbucks or,
Hmm.
any of these other places that have Wi-Fi available. You need to be using a VPN. And what that does is protect you on your side
Hmm.
so that it ghosts you and your what you've got.
It
It,
encrypts it and it forms
yes.
a tunnel. And so
Yeah.
that people are not able to see around. And yeah, and we'll go into that in more detail when you're working from home.
Yeah. True. True. Now, the other thing that I wanted to say too is what do you think about searching incognito and then tell people what that is?
Incognito is basically that they don't see who you are. It's
And say why that's important.
then they don't see who you are.
Well, lots of websites, yeah, but lots of websites capture your information when you
Yeah.
land on them.
Yes.
That's what I was searching for. I
Oh,
was
okay.
trying to I was trying to
Okay.
fish and have you say it.
It's to avoid the cookies. The
Yes.
little sign that comes up and says that you've got the cookies. It's to avoid them tracking you, and because especially with Google, because
Yes.
and some of these others, because you mention a pair of shoes and all of a sudden you're blown up with
Right.
shoes.
So the ads for the ads for the new browser, I can't DuckDuckGo,
DuckDuckGo.
that's a way to get around it. They don't say that, but
Well, and
uh,
yeah, and DuckDuckGo they do not track your privacy, but you're still going to those websites. So sometimes
right.
depending on what you want to search for, you might go out and use the incognito so that you're not trackable and you're not, those cookies are not staying.
So even if you're at work, that's what I recommend.
Oh, yes. Well,
Is
first of all, you
searching,
shouldn't be
doing
searching
anything
at
on the
work.
well, yeah, but some people have journalist jobs, Debbie, and
True.
they have to research. I mean, research is the name of their game. And so, and if they're looking for an answer for something, maybe they need to.
But
And
yes, you're
so
right.
incognito is the way to
Correct.
do that. And you can
Correct.
get that if you've got Google. If you don't know, this sounds so elementary, but if you don't know, the three dots in
It's
the
over to the
right-hand corner is
side.
that you can click in the right-hand corner
Oh,
and it says new incognito window.
those three dots are that's your control panel. It allows
Right.
you to do your settings, your privacy settings, and go through those privacy settings and check your Google accounts and see where your activity
Yeah,
is.
that'll be something else that we cover in the
Yeah,
home
that's
in the
another.
home part. But I wanted to cover that for work too,
Yes.
because there are I mean, I have lots of journalist friends and they have to research. So, I mean, it is what it is on that level.
So then once we have the access controls, we want to control the endpoint. And we're all familiar with McAfee antivirus and Bitdefender antivirus and all these antiviruses. But you know what? We've got to go to that next generation. Those are all signature based. So they basically take the signatures of known viruses, and that's what they're looking for. Does this virus or does this traffic as it's coming in, does it have this signature? But the modern or the next generation of antivirus is endpoint. It's called EDR. So it's endpoint detection and response, because now those endpoints, they are monitored or should be monitored when you're open 24/7, and it's looking at all of the activity that's happening on that endpoint. Because here's the reality: our team members are our biggest assets and our worst nightmares, because they are the user. They're the ones that are at that keyboard, and they can either stop, or they're the ones that are going to accidentally click. And so when you have that EDR, or that endpoint detection and response type of antivirus in place, it's monitoring all of the activity, all of the traffic that's going in and out. And when it sees abnormal activity, it stops, and they have live people that analyze. They do nothing but sit in front of screens and analyze. Is this a good abnormality or a bad abnormality? And so in this environment, we need to have those EDRs in place.
And so what does that look like? Is that a software like
Yes.
McAfee or
Yeah,
okay?
it's so like CrowdStrike or Sentinel-1 are two companies that I'm aware of that are, affordable, that have the EDR ability. The thing about it is that, and we've talked about this at meetings and things, doctors, businesses, period. It doesn't matter. It's not just dentists, it's businesses, period. We have this mindset that it will never happen to me until it does.
Right. Yeah.
And, we have a choice of being proactive or being on defensive. And, it's a lot better to be proactive, because it puts you in a lot better position than when you're on the defense. Because when you're on the defense, you're making stupid mistakes and it becomes more costly.
We say that all the time about fraud,
Yes,
embezzlement
all the
cases.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You never think it's going to happen to you. And then, well, mostly because the difference between the two is that they don't see their attacker in a cybersecurity attack, but in
Oh,
our
yeah.
business and embezzlement, they know, personally the attacker. And so
Yeah,
that's a
they've got that
little bit,
relationship, so I'm
yeah.
sure that's makes it harder, because they how could she do this to me? But I can tell you, when they're attacked through a cyber, it's an emotional roller coaster. It's not, I'm
Yeah.
sure you guys sometimes feel like your therapist.
There's a reason I got my degree in psychology.
Right about when a doctor's been hacked, right about the 2-week period, it seems like it hits. Oh my gosh, I'm going to lose my practice. I'm going to jail. Everything I've worked for is going away. It's just, they have this meltdown, and you got to talk them through it and reassure them this is a bump in the road, and it's a little bit of a high bump, but we're going to get over it. And that's part of what I'm here for, is to help you get over that bump and preserve everything you've got in place. I'm not going to lie to you. It's not going to be cheap, but if we have these preventions in place ahead of time, then we're not on the defense, and we're not having to, I've seen, especially in this threat landscape, I'm seeing IT companies that are telling doctors, well, businesses, period, it's not just doctors, that are telling them, okay, we've got backups, we'll just restore you and you're good. These threat actors, these groups are smart. They're about the money. That business model isn't working anymore, because, yeah, you've got a good backup and you don't need to. So we still want to back up. I'm not minimizing backups, and I'll come back to backup in a minute. However, you've got to have these other things in place, because now what's happening is they're sitting in your system, they're taking your data. We always hear about the dark web. They're putting your information on the dark web. The heck with the dark web. They're posting your information on the web. And
Yeah.
if that don't get your attention, we'll just start calling your patients. We'll just start calling your customers.
Yeah.
It really is scary, you know. But what I'm hearing from you, Debbie, is just what we say all the time with embezzlement is get those internal controls in place, these layers that you're talking about, you know, get those in place so that you can protect yourself. And, you know, Susan and I say all the time, it's not that you're necessarily going to be able to prevent anything that's going to happen, but you're putting those things in place so that if something does happen, you're going to find out that much
Right.
quicker.
Right, exactly. And so many times businesses think that their IT company has done it all for them. And the reality is that the IT can only do one thing. Their role is to protect the hardware and software within the business. They cannot control those business decisions, those business policies and processes. I know that because you and I have talked about this, Janice, separation of duties. That is a protocol that you guys recommend and put in place as
Right.
embezzlement, but I want it as in security as well, because security is not just the hardware and software, which is what, the IT does. It's the overall culture of the practice, and it's going to prevent against disgruntled employees. That's a problem.
Right.
Right now, we're seeing on social media where hackers are encouraging or luring, are you unhappy with your boss? Let me give you this code. All you got to do is download it to a flash drive, take it to work, plug it in. We'll handle the rest. Oh, and we'll give you 40%.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
So if we have these things, these controls in place, we can guard against those things. Somebody who's a toxic employee gives her notice. How do you guys tell them? I know how I tell them to handle it, but how do you guys tell them to handle it? Wait
Go
2
ahead.
weeks? Oh,
Yeah. No.
I tell them pay
No.
them for 2 weeks and get them out of here.
Yeah.
Because if
Yeah.
they're that disgruntled, they're already toxic. Are you
Yes.
going to wait to see
They're
what they
gonna.
can
Yeah.
do?
Yeah. Well, the reason often is because they don't have anybody to fill the gap,
Right.
Mhm.
which I understand, but it's sometimes more dangerous, especially if they're toxic, to keep them around. You don't want that to happen.
And
And as soon as they leave, take away those rights for everything, because
Yes,
yes,
that's what I
yes.
find a lot of them don't do. It's like they just leave it there, and I'm like,
right.
no.
Have a termination process and
Yes.
have a checklist that you go through. Yes, we changed the password. We removed their right from the
Yes.
software. We took their key. We got their uniforms.
Hang on. If they suspect them of embezzlement, I don't want them to take away the user. I want them to leave the user, just change the password.
Okay.
So,
That's good for me to know because
yes.
I tell them to
Mm,
disable their
yeah.
ability to.
Well, disable, but not delete.
Yeah, no, we don't delete. No,
Yeah.
we
So,
yeah.
that what's interesting is I remember, and all of us will for that matter, remember when internet started just coming into the practice, and it was always somebody's brother-in-law
Oh yeah,
or their son or somebody like that
nephew.
who,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
who hardwired, which meant cables running along the
Hmm.
floorboards, hardwired the practice and set up their security. Let's just make this clear because I want to make sure that there is an understanding. We're not talking about that person being in your practice.
No,
We're
No.
talking about a real IT professional who can set up to protect against cyber threat.
that has a company that has multiple employees that
Yes.
is able to respond and has that either they have the team in house that's doing the monitoring for abnormal activity, or they have partnered with somebody like CrowdStrike or Sentinel One where they are monitoring that activity. The days of having your uncle, your 15-year-old come in and do things are over.
Oh, yes. And so the point of us talking about what needs to happen in your business as far as setting up your internet protocols is to make sure that you're aware of what needs to be done so that you can oversee what the IT company is doing, and that they're adding these multiple layers that Debi has been so nice to share with us today, which are great. You know, you have to have a firewall. You have to have an Active Directory that states what the users can and cannot do. You've got to have the EDR, the end. Wait, hey, endpoint. Wait, let me get it. I'm going to remember it. Endpoint security, endpoint detection and response. I got it. EDR, endpoint detection and response. And so those three got to be in there.
And one more.
Oh, but wait, there's more.
There is more. You do need to have backups. Like I said earlier, I'm not minimizing backups because they have their purpose. The purpose of a backup is to get back up and running as quickly as possible. And so when you've been hit with a cyber attack, the average time that it takes between investigation and everything else, you're looking at minimum 21 days. But if I can get your back up, I can put up a new machine somewhere and do a temporary network between one or two devices that not in my crime scene, because I want my crime scene to be I've got to preserve that, just like you guys preserve the environment. I want to preserve my environment, but we can bring in, I've had doctors bring in their home computers and we've put them in either the operatory or we use that as the server, and we put the software on that device and we grab the wife's computer and we put that in the operatory, and then we cable between the two and we can take x-rays over here. So I want you producing, I want you working. One, the faster I get you working, the better it's going to be for you mentally, reality.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
But you still, under HIPAA and state laws, you are required to do certain things. So I need that crime scene preserved. And so that's why I need IT to come in and say, yep, you've been hit with ransomware, and back off.
So I had an interesting thing that happened last night when I was talking to a client, in that their IT person did not set up the server with dual hard drives. Only one hard drive for, this is what I recommend, a hard drive for the programs and a hard drive for the data.
Well, now, okay,
everything
now it
was on
depends.
one.
Oh. So there should be so security is redundancy. You should have a RAID system so that you're getting
mirrored.
Right. You either mirrored or striped across, depending on the number of RAIDs. And it used to be a 5 RAID, which was mirrored. Now we're into 10 RAID and 100 RAID. And now we've got striping and all that stuff. And that's real technical, so I won't go there. But redundancy is key. Now, what I like to see is the operating system on C drive, and then we have a virtual machine where our critical, that we've identified as critical data, is stored, because we can password protect our virtual machine. Mm-hmm. And then I can have another virtual, so I can have all these virtual machines that, kind of protect things. But I want that on the D drive. I don't want that on C.
Right.
Right. So, but, going back to those backups, one thing that practices and businesses should do now is back up your data, do a full system backup, disconnect it from the network, because the only secure backup is the one that is not connected to the World Wide Web. Okay. And then toss it in a locked drawer and pray you never need it.
So that would be an external hard drive.
Yes, that's one way.
Yep.
So, and there's we back up different ways for a reason. We have cloud backup and we have on-prem backup. The purpose of that external drive is so that my hard drive is crashed and I need to get the information off of it and I want it now, and I'm going to plug it in and it's right here. The cloud backup, if you've ever had to download a cloud backup, it can take 3 to 5 days. Well, that means something catastrophic has happened and I probably don't have a facility or building to physically practice in. So an example, I had a client who the building caught on fire. So, they really couldn't practice. They had been in business so long, it took 7 days for their cloud data to come down to a
Wow.
server.
Oh, yeah.
But we were able to get it down and get it going 7 days later. So they were able to notify all of their patients that the building had been destroyed and they were moving and blah, 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 blah. So those backups are there for a reason. And so you want to have the different kinds of backups.
So just to recap, because we're quickly running out of time, as I knew we would, we have the firewall, we have the Active Directory of users, we have the endpoint security, and we have your backups. These 4 layers need to be in your practice. I will say one of the questions on my fraud worksheets is, when is your practice being backed up? And I can't tell you, probably 90% of the time, they don't have a clue.
No.
How it's being done or what it's being done, or, it's not like they need to keep up with that if there is an IT company, but it would be good for them to know.
Yes, they
that,
should
hey,
know.
my IT company handles this.
They should know.
Right. So are there any last words, Debbie? What would you say?
The reality is these attacks are real. They're happening and we're all targets. Because it can happen in your business, it can happen on your phone, it can happen in your home.
So they need to stay tuned to the next episode so we talk about homes.
There you go.
Anything that we left out that needs to be prioritized for their business?
If they can start creating that culture of security, that's what's going to help them to be proactive. And it's also going to help them to meet federal and state laws. HIPAA is just one law that they have to adhere to. I've had clients that have had to report to 5 and 7 states because they were hacked, and it's where the patient lives at the time that they were hacked. And each state has different rules. Some of them are fines, some of them are credit monitoring for 18 months, some of them are jail.
Yeah. Okay. Janice, you were really quiet.
I just taking it all in because Debbie's got lots of information. So, yeah.
I know. And the one thing I'm bad about is getting it all in a short period of time.
It's not easy, is it? I know. That's why Susan and I do these all the time. So we're always adding new information.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, but I like the 4 things. And so hopefully the listeners took, if they don't understand what those 4 levels are, they can Google search in an incognito window to find out what they are and learn. And you said that right, Debbie. It's all about setting the tone in the business.
And the tone starts with the
secure.
stakeholder, right? The tone starts with the stakeholder, whether that's the doctor of the business, the owner of the business, because no matter what type of business, if you were Chase Manhattan Bank, it's the CEO and CFO. So it's the stakeholder that sets the tone, and the captain of the ship decides whether it's going to be a good voyage or a bad one.
Yep, we say that all the time too. The tone is always set at the top. So, and it is, if you want a secure practice, then that security has to start with the practice owner or the business owner. You can't be doing things that are not secure if you don't want your employees to also not do things that are secure.
Right.
So, you have to pay attention
and set the example.
We are at the end of our time together, but thank you both for this conversation. I know that we're going to record the home one, and so we hope that you guys will just pick up on the next episode, because that one will contain all the information that we need to do personally to protect ourselves against cyber attacks. And so you guys hang in there. Thank you so much, Debbie, for coming. I hope the audience takes to heart all the valuable information that they gained today, and we will move on to the next one. Y'all take care.
That's a wrap for this podcast of Money In, Money Out. Thanks for listening. Be sure to write down the most valuable tip you learned today so you don't forget it. And remember, you can find out more about all the valuable books and services Susan has to offer at www.susangunsolutions.com.